Let's learn a pasuk in Parshas Tetzaveh describing one of the 8 garments that the Kohen Gadol, the high priest, would don, would wear when he served in the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Torah, Tetzaveh Perek Chavches, pasuk Lamed Aleph, chapter 28, verse 31. Vasisa as me'il ha'ephod klil tchelos. You should weave the coat of the Kohen Gadol, and it should be completely made of tchelos, which is of course wool dyed with a turquoise, bluish, purplish, indigo color, called tchelos. Vasisa al shulav rimoine tchelos vargamen v'seilas shani. On the hem of this coat of the Kohen Gadol, you should make rimoine tchelos. Wool, also wool, the same color, turquoise wool, but with the design, with the shape of a pomegranate. And this should be with tchelos and argaman, seilas shani, turquoise wool, purple wool, scarlet wool. Al shulav saviv, on the hem of this coat, all around, on both sides. Upamoine zahav b'toicham saviv. And between them, or within them, but let's translate it now, between them, between these pomegranates of wool, you should have bells of gold. So you have paman zav v'rimoin, paman zav v'rimoin al shuli amil saviv. You have a bell made of gold, then you'll have a pomegranate design made of wool, and then you'll have another bell of gold, and then you'll have another rimoin, another pomegranate, all the way round and round on the hem of the me'il. V'hoya al Aaron l'sharis. This shall be on Aaron, the high priest, on his body when he serves. V'nishma koiloi b'voya el ha'kodesh lifnei Hashem u'b'tzeisoi v'lo yamas. So that when he enters into the holy space before Hashem, his voice, his sound will be heard. Why? Because the bells will be clapping and rattling and knocking, and as a result of that, there's no way that Aaron HaKohen or any subsequent high priest is walking in to the Mishkan or the Beis HaMikdash, and one cannot hear the sound of their arrival when you have all of these bells round and round, clapping and generating noise, v'lo yamus, and as a result of this, he shall not die. Meaning, if the Kohen, as Rashi explained and the commentators explain, the Kohen Gadol walks in and serves without any of these 8 garments, including a coat without bells, which is missing only one component, this would affect his very existence, his very life. This is the pasuk about the me'il. As an introduction, there was a very interesting archaeological discovery that was made a few years ago in June 2011. It was made in Ir David, in the ancient city of David HaMelech in Yerushalayim, in a sewer system. Sometimes you could find very precious things in sewer systems. In a sewer system in the holy city, under what constituted the main street during the era of the second Beis HaMikdash, the second temple, very close to the Harabayas, very close to what they call the Temple Mount, they found an ancient golden bell. And it dates back to the end of the period of the second Beis HaMikdash. The second Beis HaMikdash was destroyed in the year 70 after the Common Era, and this dated back a few years before that. So I was looking at a picture and a video of it. It's a beautiful bell. It's perfect. 2,000 years later, perfect shape. It's half an inch in diameter, basically around 1 centimeter. It has a small loop on top of it that appears to have been used in order to sew it to a garment, to an ornament. And probably, as they said, it was hanging at the hem of the clothes of a very wealthy, aristocratic individual 2 millennia ago. The bell still generates a very, very powerful sound, something between a clink and a rattle. And as I said, perfect position and very nicely designed. How does it end up there in a sewer system? Likely, the owner of the bell was walking in the street. Somehow, the golden bell fell off from his garments into a drainage channel. At least that's the best the archaeologists could speculate. It's the only bell they ever found of this nature from the period of the second Beis Hamikdash. It's not like a frequent. They found lots of stuff, lots of items, lots of vessels. I mean, they constantly find. But this is the only bell, golden bell, that they found from that period. That means maybe it was very common, but maybe it wasn't common, and it was really a unique bell. And thus, some have speculated that perhaps, but I think we should emphasize a few times, perhaps, only perhaps, this golden bell had far more significance than a simple gold relic from 2,000 years ago, which is also significant. Perhaps, just perhaps, it may have been one of the bells that hung at the hem of the me'il, of the coat of the Kohen Gadol. Certainly, it could have been such a bell, although I don't know that we could know. According to the Gemara in Zvachim, there were 72 bells. There were a lot of bells. The pasuk doesn't say how many bells. The pasuk says around and around. According to the Gemara in Zvachim, there were 72 pomegranates, 72 bells, 36 on one side and 36 on the other side. And as the pasuk says, you have a bell and a pomegranate, a pomegranate, a bell, pam and virimoin. It's rimoin and pamoin. So you have altogether 72. I mean, there's one more opinion in Zvachim that it was half that number. I think Zvachim daf peches. But lahalacha, most of the sages believed it was 36 and 36. But now we want to ask this question. The Torah says the purpose. V'nishma koiloi b'voye el hakodesh. We want the Kohen Gadol to walk in with a bang. Everybody has to hear. V'nishma koiloi. Literally, no pun intended. He should make noise when he goes in. He should make noise when he goes out. Why? What's the purpose of this? What's the meaning of this? What's the significance of this? In fact, at first glance, it would seem that noise making is not maybe the most appropriate way to celebrate the Avodah in the Beis Hamikdash. Why do I say maybe? So let's learn another pasuk, another story, a different era, a different period in Tanakh, and then a story in Gemara about it. And then we'll come back to the bells. Everybody knows, or we don't know, we should know the story of Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi, who lived during this first Beis Hamikdash, staged a ferocious battle against the cult of idolatry that spread during his time. The king, the Melech Yisrael at the time was Achav, and his wife, who was a greater tzadka even than he, her name was Izebel. She was a marshas, a wicked woman, and he was a rosh, he was a wicked man. And Eliyahu Hanavi single-handedly stood up both to Achav and to Izebel, and the Tanakh in Malachim describes the confrontation. At one very dramatic point that we'll read in the Haftarah of Parshas Kisisa, Eliyahu Hanavi challenges 400 Nevi'ei Habal, 400 prophets of Baal, whom most Jews were following and pursuing, and he famously tells the Jews, how long are you going to dance of tzvei chasanas? How long can you sit at the fence? Either you worship God or you worship the Baal. And he makes that famous contest, the open contest outdoors. He builds the altar on the Mount Carmel, Hara Carmel. They try to offer to their God. They make offerings and they ask their gods to consume it, and then Eliyahu Hanavi does it. And by them nothing happens. When Eliyahu Hanavi offers his karbonos, a fire consumes it. The nation screams on Hashem hu Elokim, Hashem hu Elokim. Hashem is the real God. It's a tremendous moment in the history of the Jewish people. They kill the 400 prophets of the Baal. Izebel promises Eliyahu that tomorrow she is going to kill him. And he runs away. This is after years of confronting. He promises there won't be a rain. There's no rain. There's a hunger. He kills the Nevi. They killed the Nevi Habal. Now he finally runs away. He runs away. It's a long story. He ultimately ends up at Mount Chayrev. And there he experiences a vision. Hashem reveals himself to Eliyahu and says, Malach Hafoi Eliyahu, what are you doing here? He says, Kanoi Kinesi, I am a zealot for your name. Everybody has abandoned your covenant. Despite the fact that just a little while ago there was a tremendous miraculous event, apparently it didn't have any enduring consequences. They went right back, and Eliyahu Hanavi was fed up. And he has a vision. This vision is very mysterious, very profound, and has intrigued the curiosity of commentators throughout the ages. Malachim Aleph Perik Yutes. Vayomer Hashem says, Seva Madata Bahar Lifnei Hashem. Go out and stand by the mountain in front of Hashem. V'hinei Hashem over, God will pass. V'ruach gdoila v'chazak mefarik harim v'shaber shloim lifnei Hashem. There will be a huge, powerful whirlwind that will destroy mountains, will break rocks in front of Hashem. Loi beruach Hashem. Hashem is not in the wind, not in the whirlwind. V'acher ruach rash. After the whirlwind, there will be an earthquake. Loi berash Hashem. God will not be found in the earthquake. V'acher arash eish. After the earthquake, there will be a fire. Loi beish Hashem. Hashem will not be found in the fire. V'acher eish. And then after the fire, kol d'momadaka, there will be a silent, subtle voice. That would be the experience of God. That's what God will feel like. That's what the pasuk says. And then he turns again to Eliyahu and says, what are you doing here? And Eliyahu again says, the nation has abandoned your covenant. There's nobody to talk to. And Hashem says, go make Elisha a prophet. And he goes and appoints Elisha, becomes his student and his disciple, and ultimately his successor. That's the story. Comes the Gemara in Brachas, Daf Nun Ches Amid Aleph, and tells us a story. Reb Sheshes Sagi Noir Have. Reb Sheshes, who's one of the great Amoraim, is Sagi Noir, literally full of light, a euphemism for the fact that he could not see. He was blind. Have a kozli kol alma lekabule ape malka. The whole world, in other words, the whole community, the whole city was going to welcome the king. The king was coming. V'kam azal bahadayu, Reb Sheshes stood up and he went with everybody to greet the king. V'kam azal bahadayu Reb Sheshes. Reb Sheshes went with them, period. Ashkechei ahu tzduki. There was a Sadusi, a tzduki, who was an antagonistic to Reb Sheshes, and you'll see, extremely disrespectful and not just nasty, cruel. Amar lei tells Reb Sheshes, Chatzve lenara kegani laya. This is a euphemism. He says, to the river you bring complete barrels. You don't bring broken barrels to the river. In other words, why is a blind person going to welcome the king? Amar lei Reb Sheshes says, Tachazi, come and see the yadayna tfei minach. I know more than you. When it comes to welcoming the king, I know more than you, even though I can't see. Chalav gunda kamaisa. The first gunda, the first entourage, the first troops, I think the first platoon of troops passes by. Kika afsha, they started to make noise, you know, with the trumpets and the drums. You ever saw a military, you ever went to Britain, you see how they, the changing of the guards by the Buckingham Palace, and that's only for show. That's just for the tourists. When it's the real thing, it's the real thing. Afsha's noise. They started to make the noise. You had the chatzaitzes with the kol shofrim and the hariyu, the trumpets and the shofars and the drums and the tambourines, whatever they were using. Amalei ahud tzduki. The tzduki tells Reb Sheshes, who can't see Nebuch, he says, Asamalka, here's the king. Amalei Reb Sheshes loikasi. King is not coming yet. Chalav gunda tinyana. The second group of the second troops, the second entourage came by. Kikoi avshe, when they hear the noise, Amalei ahud tzduki hashtakasi malka. Okay, now the king must be coming. Amalei Reb Sheshes loikasi malka. Nothing doing. It's just noise. Chalav tlisai, the third group of assistants, of soldiers, of servants of the king passes. Kika shoske, when they pass and it's fully quiet, amalei Reb Sheshes vaday hashta asimalk. Now the king is coming. Amalei ahutz duki minoloch. How do you know? Amalei tells him malchusa the Archaeological, malchusa the rakia. Royalty down here on earth reflects royalty above in heaven. Tiksiv, the pasuk says in Melachim Aleph Perik Yites, Tzeva Madata Bar Lefnei Hashem V'nei Hashem Eiver V'ruach Dele V'chazak Mefazik Karim Mefarik Karim Meshabes Sloim Lefnei Hashem Loi Beruach Hashem V'charuach Rash Loi Beruach Hashem V'charash Eish Loi Beruach Hashem V'charesh Kol Dma Madaka. The pasuk we just learned about Eliyahu Hanavi's vision. Kiyasa Malka, the king finally comes. Reb Sheshes was right. Pasach Reb Sheshes will come avarichle. Reb Sheshes made the blessing you make on a king. Amalei ahutz duki lemandalei chazes le kamavarches. Here he goes again. He still didn't learn. You know, making a bracha, how he learned, and then the Gemara discusses his tragic end, the end of the tzduki. Ultimately, he saw much less than Reb Sheshes. This is the story. So Reb Sheshes understood what was the argument between Reb Sheshes and the tzduki. Reb Sheshes saw in royalty one thing. The tzduki saw in royalty something else. Let's see the commentary of the Malbim in Melachim. Malbim says a commentary, it's really a very, very powerful observation. The Malbim explains Eliyahu Hanavi was a frustrated leader. He was a frustrated prophet, Rebbe, Manig, Rosh Yeshiva, Mashpia, Navi. He tried and tried to no avail. He did it miraculously. He stopped the rain, no influence. He made this huge miracle where a fire consumes all of his offerings, even though there's water on all the karbonos, nothing doing. They're still entrenched in a cult of idolatry. And he runs away. The Malbim explains Eliyahu Hanavi was running away. He says, this is not who I was. I never needed this. I'm not a guy. You have people who need public office, right? We had somebody who was paid almost $100 million in order to be reelected. Eliyahu Hanavi says, I don't need this. I'm done. I'm finished. And he goes away to Har Chayrev. Let me live the life I always wanted to live. Dveikus, transcendence, meditation, intimacy with the Rebbeinu Shalom. A real prophet. Says the Malbim, Hashem hereloi le'Eliyahu, Hashem showed him. Ke'ein Hashem beruach raj ve'eish el rak b'kol demama. God cannot be found in a whirlwind, in an earthquake, in a fire, only in a silent voice. Umikan yilmedu shluchav v'neviyav. From here, his emissaries as Nevi'im should learn. Lebal yisarusar. Machnish ken groise shturim. Don't make earthquakes. Don't make tornadoes. Don't generate storms. Bal yarishu rash. Don't holler. Bal yaviru eish. Don't make fires. K'may sha'aseh Eliyahu b'kinos el Hashem tzvayis. Which is like Eliyahu was doing. Sha'atzer es hashamayim. He stopped the heavens. V'shachet es nevi'ei Abal. He slaughtered the prophets of the Baal. Ki Hashem yishlach es nevi'av she'yavoyu aleim b'kol d'mama. Hashem wants his prophets to come with a silent, subtle voice. You have to pull in the people with ropes, with strings of love, and with soft words. So he's giving a message eternally to Eliyahu Hanavi. You're giving up on the people because you weren't successful. You weren't successful not because of them, but because of your approach. There's an approach of Rash. There's an approach of Ruach. There's an approach of Eish. Mit fire. You create such a tornado, such a storm, such a tsunami, and you expect everybody to be swept up in it. The problem is tsunamis last only for a few hours, a few days. They create devastation in their wake, no question. They leave an impact, but it's over, and everybody goes back to their life, and that's what Eliyahu Hanavi was experiencing. And Hashem says, go back, train Elisha, but the point is, kol d'mama daka. You have to be able to speak to people's hearts. You need to love them. You need to respect them. You need to embrace them. This is how the Malbim understands this vision. But now we come back to our question. Loi b'rash Hashem, loi b'ruach Hashem, loi b'eish Hashem, kol d'mamadak. The Kohen Gadol represented not just a priest, that every Kohen was the servant of Hashem. He represented, so to speak, Hashem in the Beis HaMikdash. The Kohen Gadol was la creme de la creme. He was the ultimate representative, as the Pasuk says in Divrei Hayamim, Vayavdel Aaron Lakdishay Kodesh Kadashim. He's the Holy of Holies. So all the Kohanim, when they walked in and out, you couldn't hear any noise. When the Kohen Gadol walks in and out, there's a lot of noise. V'nishma koiloi bevoyel HaKodesh, and it's essential. What happened to the koil d'mamadak? To the silent noise. This is what we want to address, and as usual, we will present, Be'ezer Hashem, different perspectives. They say a line from Oscar Wilde I once read, the nicest feeling in the world is to do a good deed anonymously, and then somebody finds out. Right? We can relate to that, right? Matam b'sei sahem, matam b'sei sahin. No need to publicize my name. But if you do, nish gefährlich. I never heard of a din Torah. Somebody says, no need to thank me, but nobody ever took anybody to a rabbi, to a din Torah, because he complimented him or he publicized him. Unless if you did not spell his name right. But we know that the Torah approach is a little different. The Torah approach is that the greatest act of tzedakah is one performed discreetly, one in which the giver doesn't even know to whom he's giving and the recipient doesn't know from whom he's receiving it, because God is found in the small, soft voice of silence, the sound of silence, the sound of compassion, of study, of ma'asim tovim, of good deeds. What's the famous expression? I think Chazal say it somewhere, that a tzedakah box that contains a single coin makes a lot of noise. A tzedakah box that's full doesn't make any noise. When you have one coin, sure, a lot of noise, right? When it's full, there's no noise. Or as they say, still waters run deep. When you see the still waters, usually there's a lot of depth. So you have people who are always making noise. They will never stop and reflect. It's very hard for them to listen. It's very hard for them to be attentive. And usually that means there's not much in the box. People who make a lot of noise, is usually not many coins in the box. A lawyer once told me, his professor told him, when you have a weak argument in court, you got to yell. Okay? If your argument is weak, you yell like a meshugana. Because that substitutes for the lack of substance. That compensates for the lack of substance. You yell, it sounds like you're making a point. When you actually have substance, there's no need to yell. Shlomo HaMelech said it best. I put it here in the sources. Koheles Perik Tes. Nobody ever says it better than Shlomo HaMelech. Divrei Chachamim benachas nishmayim mizakas moishel baksilim. The words of the wise, benachas nishmayim, will be heard with subtlety. And it's much more heard, it's nishmayim, it's much more heard than the scream of the moishel, of the dictator, who's screaming at fools. The ruler of fools screams, the wise man speaks benachas. And yet, a great noise had to be generated every single day. And not only when he walked in, every time the Kohen Gadol moved. This means the whole day it made noise. From what? From the robe of the Kohen Gadol, v'nishma koiloi b'voyel HaKodesh, and without this v'lo yamus, his existence is dependent on it. It's not just a small, inconsequential detail. His very life and existence is dependent on it. I have to tell you a cute story I once read. There was this old retired man who retired and he moved away to a suburban neighborhood. He bought himself a little home. The mistake was it was near a junior high school. And it was summer months, so there was no school. But then came September and school began. And the youngsters, they finished school at 4 o'clock and you're bored. So what would they do? 3 guys every single day had a minute kavua. They would leave school and they would go over to every trash can and beat it. With their hands, with a bat, with a stick, with a branch, non-stop. Day after day, this poor guy thought he's retiring into a life of serenity. And here, it was basically Shoshanas Yaakov Tzal of Samecha every day. Arur Haman ben Amdasa, geklapped and geklapped. They didn't stop. Was tut man, what do you do? So he goes over to them one day. He says, boys, do I love the noise you make? It gives me excitement and vibrancy. You know, I'm an old geezer. My life is boring. I'm weak and frail. But when I hear the noise, you clap those trash cans for hours, it really makes me feel young again, because I used to do exactly the same thing when I was young. And I appreciate it so much. Every single day, I'm going to give each of you $5 for doing this for 2 hours. Every day, you'll make $5. Wow. And here is an advance money, gives each of them $5. Shine. Now they go over, now it's mamish l'shem mitzvah, they're clapping and they're beating the trash cans. Each day he gives them $5. After a week he goes over to them, he says, you know, the recession finally caught up. It caught up, I have to reduce your pay. From $5, it's going to become $1. They were disappointed. Okay, but $1, shine. He gives them $1. A week later he says, listen, the financial situation is really, really not doing well. It's dire. I spoke to my accountant. I simply can't afford it. What I can afford now is to give you each a nickel. You'll get a nickel per week for beating the trash cans. They look at him. You miser, you stingy old man. You think we're going to do this to you for a nickel per week? Who do you think we are? We're losers? Never. And since that day, the man enjoyed serenity and peace of mind and tranquility. I think he's still sleeping. May he enjoy it for many more years. I want to address a few perspectives. The first is the Ramban. The Ramban asks the question. Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman, the 13th century great Spanish sage, physician, philosopher, leader, halachic authority, debater. The Ramban, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman, in his commentary on Chumash, explains to us and says, basically, before you enter into the king's chamber, you need to ask permission. How do we ask permission? You ring the bell, you knock on the door, you send in a shliach, you send a messenger. This idea is brought also Rabbeinu Bechaya, Rabbeinu Menachem of Rekanti. These are all the generations of the Rishonim. It's a form of seeking, so to speak, the consent of the king. Achashverosh already, Esther says about Achashverosh, you don't go in without permission. So Achashverosh was a paranoid melech tipish. But the concept is any king or any prominent person, you don't just open the door, you enter with permission. What was the method? The Kohen Gadol was basically ringing a bell, quite literally. Before they rang bells, he actually literally was ringing the bell and saying, Master of the universe, Hineni, Hineni ani mimas, I'm approaching you, allow me to come in. And apparently the answer he understood, it was always a yes, and he would walk in. And really, it's rooted in a Gemara, Masechta Nida, Daf Tazayin Amud Beis, a beautiful Gemara. Amr Reb Shimon ben Yochai, Arba Dvarim HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Soinon v'ani eini oihavan. There are 4 things that God dislikes, that Hashem hates, loathes, and I don't like them either. Hanichnas lebeisai pisai. Somebody who enters his home suddenly. You have to give people time to prepare. People go to their house, they open the door. Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, it's inappropriate. Taka your home, your wife, your children, your husband, whoever is in the home, but still let them know you're coming. Certainly the home of a friend. The Medrash says in Vayikra Rabbah Perek Chaf Aleph, Reb Yochanan kad have a solik lemishal shlomei de Reb Chanina. Reb Yochanan would go to seek the welfare, to say hi to Reb Chanina. Have mevabeya al shum v'nishma koiloi. He would make noise before. Why? Because it says v'nishma koiloi b'voiloi. Reb Chanina is kodesh. You don't go in without permission. What's bothering you? Huh? Okay, wonderful. Of course, we're still bothered. Why on the way out? And more important, this, he could take it off when he comes in. You don't ring the bell a whole day. I let you come in. A whole day he's ringing the bell. Every move he makes, every step he takes. That was poetry. He's generating noise. Why? But this is what the Ramban teaches us. Comes the Abarbanel, Don Yitzchak Abarbanel, You know who Rabbi Barbanel was? He lived in the 15th century. He was the Spanish finance minister. He was the Sarah Oitzer of Spain under Ferdinand and Isabella, who was reminiscent of the Izebel I spoke about earlier, under whom the expulsion of 1492 Rishon and Beis occurred, and Barbanel himself left, even though he was given permission to stay in Spain because of his unique contribution to the welfare, to the economy of the country. Barbanel chose to leave, ultimately settled in Italy, and wrote his famous commentary on almost the whole of Tanakh. Barbanel says that if the Kohen Gadol went into the Beis HaMikdash without the proper mindfulness, without the proper kavanah, without the proper hachana, without the proper preparation, without the proper awareness, he can die. And in order for people to know that he died, he wore the bells. So when they stopped hearing the noise, basically they knew that it spelled trouble. This is what the Barbanel Tainas. So simply, that's the V'nishma koiloi b'voye el HaKodesh. Yet it's perplexing, because that's not what the pasuk says. The pasuk says when he comes into the Kodesh, we should hear his noise. Ubetzeisayam when he goes out. It does say v'lo yamos. So this is the source of the Barbanel, but it still seems a little bit perplexing, especially every day he's not going into the Kodesh HaKadosh. Yom Kippur, when he went into the Holy of Holies, he wasn't wearing the me'il. He was only wearing 4 linen garments. According to the Ramban, Yom Kippur, he didn't have to ask permission. Why? Because Yom Kippur, the greatness of the day, Hashem says, come in directly without any messengers. No need for permission. It's a beautiful insight. According to the Barbanel, Yom Kippur, actually, there was no noise. And the Gemara Chazal tell us that he was mispalot tefillah ktsara. We say it in the Avodah. When the Kohen Gadol finished in the Holy of Holies, he davened only a short prayer. Why? Shelo yavis es Yisrael. The Jewish people shouldn't get scared that he didn't make it in the Kodesh HaKadosh. But every day there were other Kohanim there. This is the interpretation of the Barbanel. There's another interpretation by the Alshich. Rabbi Moshe Alshich was one of the Talmidim of the Beis Yosef. Rabbi Yosef Karo, the Maran, the author of the Shulchan Aruch, lived in Tzfas. A colleague of the Arizal, of the Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Kordever, Rabbi Shlomo El-Kabetz, the Beis Yosef. This was the great generation of sages in Tzfas. Rabbi Moshe Alshich lived in Tzfas and he passed away in 1593. He was born in 1508. He passed away in 1593. You know, he used to hold a drasha every Shabbos and he wrote it up in the Sefer Torah Moshe Alshich on Tanakh. He asks the following question. He says the Torah describes the pamoinim between the rimoinim. Right? The Torah says pamoin zav v'rimoin al shulei hameil saviv. So you have a pamoin zav and you have a rimoin. Before that, the Torah says you should make rimoinim upamoinei zav b'soicham. In other words, the pamoinim are between the rimoinim. Asks the Alshich. You could say it the other way also. The rimoinim are between the pamoinim, right? You have 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So any way you cut it, this you could say this is between this or this is between this. Yet the Torah emphasizes that the pamoinim have to be b'toicham, between the rimoinim, as Rashi explains it. Even though technically you had 72 of each of them, 36 on this side, 36 on this side. This is what perturbs the Alshich. And he explains this based on a Gemara. The Gemara says in Zvachim daf Peches Amid Beis, Ksoinis mechaperes al shvichas dam. The tunic of the Kohen Gadol atoned for murder. Shenemar vayishchatu sirizim vayitbalu es haktoinas bedam. The Shvatim, you remember, slaughtered a goat and they dipped Yosef's tunic in blood. Michnasayim mechaperes al gili arayis shenemar vasela michnas ebad lechasus psarev. The pants the Kohanim wore atoned for immoral relationships because the pants cover that part of the body. Mitznefes mechaperes al gasi haruach. The turban, the hat, atones for arrogant people. Minayin amar Reb Chanina yavei davar shebegoiva v'yichaper al goiva. The hat, the turban on top of the head, is the highest part of the body. It atones for that sense of ich bin hecher. Ich bin a feinschmecker. Ich bin from the bessere Menschen. I'm above everybody else. I have a crown on my head. Avneit mechaper arhurul halev. Avneit, the belt, the gartel, atones for various negative or immoral thoughts and feelings in a person's heart. That's why the belt is where it is, which is the concept till today of a gartel, of a belt, to be to separate between the higher part of the body and the lower part of the body. The Gemara says in Shabbos, Aser Hamyane Hikan Likras Alakachi Yisrael. That's the concept of the gartel. Choshen Mechaper Aladinin. The choshen, the breastplate, atones for immoral justice. Shenemar vasisa choshen mishpat. Ephod mechaper alavodis kechavim. Shenemar ein ephod utrafim. The apron atones for idolatry. Finally, me'il, the coat. Mechaper aloshen har. The coat atones for gossip, slander. Minayin, Amar Reb Chanina, Yavoy Dover Shebekoil, v'yichaper al koil hara. The coat makes noise. The Torah is saying, let this noise atone for bad noise. There's good news and there's bad noise. Gossip and slander is also somebody who makes a ruckus and noise. You heard what he said. You heard what happened. Let me tell you about this guy. Let me tell you about her. Let me tell you about him. And then he continues, V'tzitz mechaper al azus panim. The tzitz, the plate on the forehead, atones for chutzpah, azus panim, rude chutzpah, betzitz ksiv haya al metzach aaron, ubazus panim ksiv metzach isha zoyna hayalach. Both are related to the forehead. Comes the Helik Alshich HaKadosh of Moshe Alshich, and he says, basically, the Me'il's focus is a person learning how to cultivate their speech. Therefore, the Torah says, each bell, each sound that a person makes has to be surrounded by two silent pomegranates. Between two remainim, you have one pamoin. In other words, as he brings from the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Sag l'chachma shtika, the fence for wisdom is silence. A person who is truly wise should learn how to remain silent often so he could listen, learn, absorb, rather than speak, scream, judge, and often gossip. So the bell represents words. The pomegranate, which was made of wool, represents silence. The bell, he says, also represents the tongue. Why? The tongue is, as Chazal say, the tongue is a very interesting part of our body. Hashem made two walls to protect it. The tongue is behind the teeth, and besides that, there's an extra veil. Of course, the jaws, the lips. So the tongue is behind the teeth and behind the lips. It's not enough to have one wall, you have to have two walls. In other words, before you speak, be careful, be mindful, be sensitive, be big, be large. Ask yourself which part of you is speaking, is communicating. Your higher self or your lower self, your confident self or your insecure self, your self-centered lower self, fearful self, or deeper, wholesome, more godly self. So he says, just like the soft material of the pomegranates dampen or they silence the harsh sounds of the bells knock against the pomegranates and they silence it. So you have to guard your tongue with the teeth and with the lips so that only pleasant speech emerges from it. The Alshich says something sharp. Why did Hashem give people two eyes and only one mouth? Two eyes should have two mouths. And he said to remind us that only half of what you see you should share with others. 50% of what you see stays within yourself. A lot of what you see and you hear should be kept to yourself. Of course, this is all summed up in a Gemara in Megillah. The Gemara says in Megillah, Daf Yud Ches Amud Aleph, Amri b'ma'arava. They say in the west, in Eretz Yisrael, the west of Babylonia, Mila b'sela, a word is worth one sela. Mashtuka, silence, betraying, is worth two slayim. That's what the Alshich is telling us. He's saying basically, you see the rimain on one side, the rimain on the other side, inside a palmain. Every palmain gets two rimainim. Why? Because the palmain is the word. Silence is the rimain. That should always be double. Because for silence, you get 2 slayim. For a word, you get 1. In other words, it's worth double the value of a milah. I once saw a vart, I don't remember where I saw it once. Usually, the expression for silence is shtika, right? In Pirkei Avos, it's shagla chachma shtika. Here, the expression is mashtuka betrain, which is like mishtika, mashtuka betrain. So perhaps it's just the Aramaic way of saying shtika silence. I once saw a vart from somebody. He said what the Gemara is saying is as follows. Amri b'ma'arava. They said in Ma'arava, mila b'sela. A word is worth a sela, right? Mashtuka betrain. Not silence is worth 2 slayim. It's like it says mishtika. A regular word that you speak is worth 1 sela. Mashtuka, a word that is spoken from silence. In other words, it's preceded from silence. It's preceded by silence. It emerges mishtuka from shtika. That's worth 2 slayim. In other words, both parts are talking about a person speaking, but it's 2 ways of speaking. There's a person who just speaks, as we say, a hakta chainik, and now I understand the oimek of hakta chainik. When you hack a chainik, it makes a lot of noise. It makes a lot of noise, right? A kettle, that's what it does. So that's one way of speaking. And then there's mashtuka. The words come from silence. In other words, they come from a place of depth. They come from a place of mindfulness, of consciousness, of awareness, who you are, who you want to be. That word is betraying. So the word is worth 2 slayim. This is consistent with the Alshich. The Torah emphasizes the Rimonim have to be, the Hamoinim have to be in the Rimonim, surrounded by the Rimonim. Let them emerge from the pomegranates, from the silence. This is the Alshich's perspective. What would leave us a little wanting is, what if you could put your cell phones on vibrate so we can have a little more silence? Not that we don't like the music. The music is beautiful. V'nishma kailai. Now, what of course we would still try to understand is, this is connected to Me'il because Lashon Hara. But the Torah says, V'nishma kailai b'voyai el ha-kodesh u'b'tzeisai v'lo yamo. So the Alshich is giving us a remez. But it seems a little difficult to put into the words of the pasuk, V'nishma kailai b'voyai el ha-kodesh. Although the Alshich explains, when you come into holiness, this is a holy way of speaking. There's a holy way of talking, unholy way of speaking. And he goes in at length. There's a famous long Rambam about 5 different types of speech that a person should discover in themselves. Those that are absolutely forbidden, those that are absolutely wonderful and obligatory, and then in the middle of them you have those that are permissible, those that are necessary, those that are not forbidden, but sepasnisht. 5 different types of speech, which is what the Alshich at length goes in there. You could read it. I once saw a beautiful interpretation of the Bali Musar. The Bali Musar, the teachers of ethics, used to say as follows. Again, I don't know the first source of it. I just saw it quoted a number of years ago. When the Kohen Gadol was wearing these bells, he produced a sound even at the slightest movement. Even the slightest movement or action made a sound. So that means if he moved 1 foot or even a few inches, picked up his hand, scratched his forehead, bent down, whatever it is, it right away made a sound. What the Torah is trying to say is, V'nishma kaila mevoyei el ha-kodesh. A person should know that everything a person does, even an insignificant movement that a person performs and he or she may look at it as insignificant, it has an impact. It makes a sound. What do they say? A sneeze on one side of the world can create a tornado. On the other side of the world, a butterfly flaps its wings, and a commotion is created far more than somebody imagines. V'nishma kailai, part of Kedusha is knowing words have impacts, actions have impacts, even if they seem absolutely small and insignificant, and therefore never neglect an opportunity of saying or doing the right thing, even if you're small, because every move a person makes, every step a person takes, generates a sound that leaves an impact somewhere, sometime, in some form or fashion. Another beautiful lesson, of course, the question would remain, what's the connection with the Me'il? And what's the bevoyai u b'tzeisai v'lo yamos? So these are all different perspectives, and there are more perspectives. I just wanted to choose a few that are frequently discussed. And I want to go now over to another dimension, another perspective. This following explanation is discussed at length in the works of Chassidus Chabad. And essentially, as we will see, in Torah, ultimately, everything is consistent, everything is synchronized. It captures, I think, a deeper layer of everything we discussed, but takes it to a different dimension. And it takes us back to the vision of Eliyahu Hanavi. What is the reason? Loi beruach Hashem, loi berash Hashem, loi beyesh Hashem, only a koil demama daka. Or let's put it differently. When do we make noise and when are we silent? We all know there's times we're silent, we're quiet. There's times that we make noise, we make a lot of noise. Different people have different situations. Some people, the default state is they make noise. For them to be quiet is a great chiddush. Other people, it's the other way around. Right? I once saw a shul, they put up a sign, Asr lehispalel b'shas hadibur. Usually the sign in shul is Asr ledaber b'shas hatfilah. You're not allowed to speak during davening. In this shul it was you're not allowed to daven during speaking. The default state is here we speak. Now you want to daven? Okay. But there's no davening while we speak. You wait till everybody finishes the conversation, then we'll start davening. For some people, it's very hard to deal with silence. You ever go in an elevator and you're going up 70 floors? What do? And then the elevator gets stuck for a few minutes, right? So you have 10 people in the elevator. So what do? So most people are not comfortable with silence, right? So today, Baruch Hashem, you could start texting. You don't even have to text to anybody. The main thing is you text to yourself. You just don't have to look at anybody. Or you talk about the weather, or you talk about Trump, or something else that could make for light conversation. But I want to give the following illustration. You send off your child to study. Okay, so today the minhag is people come in very, very often. Chanukah latkes, bar mitzvah, sometimes a bris, a chasana. Till a few years ago, it wasn't so frequent. You send your child off to learn. You saw somebody who are very close to your heart, and they come back after a year. Or sometimes they come back after 2 years. And you go to the airport, and you see this person from far. You're not close to them yet, but you see them from far. And you're a Baal Spilus, you're an emotional person. So very often, you're like, hey, you start screaming. And you run over to the person. And then you give this person, this child, or this best friend, or this beloved sibling, or whoever it is, close to your heart, you give them a hug. But as you're embracing each other, you stop screaming. You'll usually not find when two people who are very close are hugging each other after not seeing each other for many years, and during the hug, they're screaming. The screaming comes before the hug, as you're approaching each other. When you actually embrace, now you're silent. But now you should scream. Now is the real excitement. You finally met, not when you were on the other side of the airport and you saw them from far. And you're like, hey, I can't believe it. With this, then is the hispilus. Now, silence. Why shouldn't have been the other way around, or at least scream both situations? So let's understand this a little deeper, the way it's explained in the works of Kabbalah, the works of Musar, and the works of Chassidus. And I think the best way to explain it is a mashal, a metaphor I once heard. I'll soon tell you the circumstances in which this mashal, this metaphor was said. It's quite interesting and sharp. But let me tell you the story itself. Ma'aser shehaya kach haya, or Ma'aser shelo haya kach haya, whatever it is. There was a very rich man, extremely wealthy man, who one day decided he wants to invite the poor, homeless beggar of the city for a meal. And he goes to the Kaptzen, Ben Kaptzen, the man who's been poor for ages since Adam Arishan, and he invites him for a meal. This man is excited. Finally, he'll have something more than a boiled potato. And he comes into to the home of the wealthy man. The wealthy man, the host, settles quietly into his seat. He tucks his beautiful linen napkin under his chin. His body is supported by the silk chair of luxury that he's sitting on, and he gets to eat the soup. He takes the spoon, puts it into the soup, into the yoich, and he starts enjoying the soup. This poor man, first of all, he's used to a hard bench. So when he sits in this comfortable chair, like, wow, this is amazing, this is incredible. And just to make sure that he doesn't, chas v'shalom, forfeit even one aspect, it takes him 20 minutes just to settle in. You know, like whenever you go in first class for half an hour, people are trying out all the buttons because they want to make sure you already paid a lot for your ticket. You paid a lot for your ticket. You want to suck the marrow out of first class. Where are you going to stop, sit via shlamazel? I know people, they're miserable a whole flight because they're not sure if they got it all the way back, the right position. The feet are elevated, not elevated. It's more miserable. They should have sitting in economy. It would have been easy. Right? So when you give people a smorgasbord of endless diversity, they go home hungry because they don't know what to eat. Unless you have the eights of eating everything. But so this man, he couldn't believe it. Such a cheer. So he's sitting, he's making himself comfortable. His pleasure is absolutely overwhelming. He has to do justice, as they say, to this gift. Now comes time to eat. The wealthy man already finished the soup. What does he do? He attacks the food, but attacks it with full gusto and full passion. First of all, he marvels at the cutlery. He never saw such elegant, beautiful cutlery. And then every scoop, he oying and aboying and celebrating and exalting the virtues of the host and the virtues of the soup. And then when the steak platter comes, now it's a full front attack. Yehorig Val Yavor, now his whole soul, his whole body is completely immersed. And he makes sure not to leave over even a mashu, suffik mashu, on the plate. Nothing is left over. In the kitchen, the chef remarks to the butler, and he says, at last, a man who appreciates fine cuisine. Finally, we have somebody who is sensitive, who understands what I do every day. Somebody who appreciates it, who celebrates it. Look how involved he is. Look how he's worshiping the food. This is a man with a sense for the sublime, for the aristocratic, for the rich, for glory. The other one is just a brute. Says the butler, no, my son. You are very, very mistaken. The very opposite is true. You see, the rich man's tranquility, his calmness, his relaxation, indicates the depth of his involvement with the food that he's eating. The pauper's noisy excitement simply underscores how alien all of this is to him, how novel it is. For the rich man, luxury is the very essence of life. He doesn't get excited about it like you don't get excited about your breathing. His jaw doesn't open wide and he doesn't holler from joy and excitement, just like people don't start dancing usually when they wake up in the morning. They take it for granted. For the poor man, this is an otherworldly experience. He's so excited because it's so new. It's shocking. He never experienced this. It's overwhelming. It's superimposing itself upon his natural day-to-day life of a poor, poverty-stricken man who eats a hard piece of bread and a boiled potato if he's lucky. The noise is the friction between his habitual self, his natural self, and this new pampered, steak-eating, luxurious self that he's attempting to assume on this night. What's the proof, he says? Tomorrow night, I'll show you something. Tomorrow night, he invites him again. He loved how much he thanked him. And they decide to do a shtick. What food do they send out? They send out simple poor man's food. Boiled potato, piece of bread. The poor man sees a boiled potato. Okay, back to life. He eats it, no problem. The rich man gets up, goes to the kitchen, starts screaming, I will fire all of you. How do you have the chutzpah, the guts? Who am I? The butler turns to the baker and says, last night you said he's indifferent. He doesn't get it. Why is he so aggravated? He says, this is where you see it. When he has it, you don't know how deep it is when you take it away from him. When you take it away from the pauper, doesn't mean anything. You take it away from him, you're taking away from him a limb. You're amputating a limb. It's so much part of him. He can't imagine his life without it. That's why he's not excited. When did this mashal take, when did I hear this metaphor? So I heard it from a Yid, Rabbi Yoel Khan, who said it was in the city of Leningrad, the city of, not Leningrad, the city of Rostov. Rostov is a city near the Don River in South Russia. The fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Rebbe Rashab, escaped to Rostov from the Germans in 1915. During the First World War, they came to White Russia, where he lived in the city of Lubavitch, and he escaped. So he didn't want to be under the Germans, he said, even for a day. And they said the Russian Tsar is better. He said the Russian Tsar is Russia Marusha, but it says 2 years before the revolution, but the Germans, there's nothing like the Germans. He doesn't want to be under the Germans even for a day. It was Kaiser Wilhelm. He said Wilhelm is Wilhelm. He wants darkness. Wilhelm. He wants concealment. All due respect to any Wilhelms here. This is just, he's talking about Kaiser Wilhelm from Germany, not the Chashevei Yerushalayim or Wilhelm Mishpachas. So, but I think it's a German name. So he moved to Rostov. He passed away a few years later in 1920, Tofrei Shpei, and his son, the Rayatz, succeeded him, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak. There was a terrible hunger those days. This is the beginning of the Bolsheviks won, the communists won. Lenin was ruling the new Soviet Union. The famine then killed millions of people in Russia. It was a horrible, horrible time in Russia. And then it just became worse with Stalin a few years later. Trotsky was the leader of the Red Army. And there was a terrible hunger. There was a yeshiva that his father had, Tomchit Mimim, that was transferred, that was in Rostov. And his son took it over, and there was a terrible hunger. The boys would sometimes have no food or a little bit food. Vahi ayoim, somebody brought duck for dinner. Wie sagt man duck? A kachke. Somebody brought a kachke for dinner. Duck. One kachke. Okay. So the boys who were used to eating a few blueberries, or if they were lucky, a piece of bread, see a kachke. So what do? They do this in yeshiva even on a good day, right? Even in Muncie. You see, right? When the boys see a nice smorgasbord, what do? They jump it. They jump it. But when you're hungry, you really jump it. So they jump the kachke. Mazel, the main donor of the yeshiva, came to visit that day. And he walked into the kitchen by supper. And he sees the all-out attack, the milchemes tnufa, the offensive on the kachke. He was a well-fed, wealthy Jew who was a donor. He used to support Torah. So he turns to one of the older Bachrim, who was like a mentor in the yeshiva, Shalom Yeshiva, Mashpia, or Mashgiach, whatever he was, and he says, Das is B'nai Torah. This is how people of Torah behave. This is what I'm supporting. These are brutes. These are crude people. This is how you jump on food. Such taiva. This is what all their learning did to them. The Gemara, the Halacha, the Chassidus, this is what it does. Who is the Edelkeit? Where's the refinement? So I heard from Rabbi Yoel, this man understood, this elder Bach understood there's a crisis here because he's a supporter. But on the other hand, he wasn't too old in order to know the rule that you have to flatter. So he decided he's going to share with him an idea, and he told him this story that Hasidim used to say. That the poor man jumps the food. The wealthy man doesn't jump the food, not because he's not excited, but because it's so much part of his life, he takes it for granted, he doesn't get excited. So he said, Gib a cook. The Bachrim are getting excited over the kachke. You know why? Because it's so new to them, it's so unusual for them. Du bist the kachke. Du und the kachke seinen geworden ein Sach. You are a piece of behemoth. You are a piece of meat. Of course you don't get excited about it. You take it for granted it's you. He said, at least look at their eyes. It's a chiddush, it's a new thing. Now, you're going to ask me if we continue to support the yeshiva or not. Ich weiß nicht. They say the shlemiel pours the soup on the shlemazel, And the nudnik wants to know what type of soup it was. I don't know if he continued to support the yeshiva. I would love to say not only did he continue to support, he quadrupled his contribution because he heard words of emes, but I don't know. It's really not the point what type of soup it was. But the point is a powerful point. And here's the point. Noise is the sound of resistance. When you punch the air, you ever try doing it? When you punch the air, no noise. Right? When you punch your desk, in the middle of the day, when you get the telephone call you don't like, you punch the desk. Now this noch has a velvet, but you punch a wooden desk, it emits a lot of noise. Why? The ear absorbs your punch. The desk resists your punch. That's the difference. So what is noise? Noise is the sound of resistance. You could try it out if you want to give a punch. Let me put it in abstract terms. Ear doesn't have a big ego, and it doesn't resist your punch. A beautiful wooden desk has a bigger ego. You punch it, it says Atkan. It's a yesh. In abstract terms, I don't mean literally your desk has an ego, but the person by sitting by the desk may have an ego. But the idea is the yesh, it creates resistance. Ear allows itself to absorb your punch. The Baal Tanya, Rabbi Shnei Zalman of Liadi the Alter Rebbe in Torah Ur, in his Maimorim on Chanukah, illustrates this in a very interesting way. He said, consider the sound. These are cold days. So what do Choshev Yidden do in Monsey? They go to the fireplace and they do marshmallows. I don't know what you do by your fireplace, or sing poetry, or sit around with Lahavdullah Blad Gemara by the fireplace, or tell a nice story to your children. There's a difference between the sound emitted by a fire log, a log in the flames, a pile of burning straw, or an oil lamp that you light on Chanukah, or whenever you light an oil lamp. What's the difference? He says when you burn a log, what do you hear? A noisy crackle. That's what you hear. A straw, put in a straw, what do you hear? A whispering sizzle, right? This is the sizzle. Oil? Nothing. Silence. Why? Why doesn't the oil emit noise? Why doesn't the straw emit noise? Says the Baal Tanya, says, in each case, matter is succumbing to the energy that's locked within it. The matter is being destroyed by the fire. The log is a yesh. The log is a metzias. The log has an entity. The log offers the most resistance. And therefore it voices its reluctance to part with its outer form and to surrender to the flame. How does it resist? It makes a macho, it protests. What's the protest? Sudden explosions and noisy crackling throughout. The log is brute, it's dense, it's thick, and it therefore has and creates and generates the most resistance to it losing its outer form, to the fire consuming it. It doesn't allow itself to be consumed without friction, without putting up a fight, without noise. What about straw? So straw also has a yesh, also has a reality, but you can't compare it to a log. It's more fine. Quite physically, it's more thin. It's not as physical and brute as the log, so it protests with a whispering sizzle. He says oil is the finest, most sublime, in many ways most spiritual substance of all the three. Right? The Gemara says a menachas shemen is chachma, and therefore it burns silently. It freely yields to the essence within without any protest. Now come back to the mashal in the airport. I haven't seen my best friend for a long time. I haven't seen my daughter in 2 years. I haven't seen my son in a year. I observe them from a distance. There's an overwhelming excitement. There's an overwhelming shock. That's what creates the noise. It's something that shakes up my ordinary self. It's like the pauper who observed this grand meal. The noise that you're making is coming from what? From the newness, from the novelty. It's something that your nature is not accustomed to. And therefore there's friction between your habitual self and this newly either positive, hopefully positive, joyous experience that you're experiencing. It takes me out of my regular routine. So revealed excitement is always the result of friction. Friction between what? You have friction between the fire and the log, and here you have friction between my regular self and this new energy that overwhelmed me, that overwhelmed my psyche. An encounter that's shocking, an exciting new experience, and so forth. Whenever you see a person screaming from excitement, screaming for any other reason, what is it? What is it? It's a new experience, and to assimilate it is not a simple process because it's overwhelming, and the resistance is always there. So you're excited, but there's resistance. That's the key. Of course you're excited, but the absorbing doesn't happen easily. There's always resistance. Once I meet my child, once I'm there with my daughter, once I'm there with my son, or with my best friend, and I embrace them, now we become one. When you become one, there's no noise anymore. When you're one with something, now there's silence. When the resistance between you and the other reality dissipates, you merge into a seamless, silent intimacy and oneness. There are two words in Lashon Kodesh for this. Hispailos versus dveikus. Hispailos is a tremendous explosion of emotion, like the log burning in fire. It's like, wow, it may be, this is amazing, this is awesome. Like the pauper by the meal. He's exploding from excitement. That's hispailos. What's dveikus? V'davak be'ishtoi v'hoyu lebasar echad. Dveikus is oneness. Davuk. I'm actually one with you. You're part of me. And when you become part of me, was schreist du? What are you screaming? It's inappropriate in a very intimate moment. Start hollering, screaming. Was schreist du? A moment ago was appropriate. Like, wow! Now, it compromises the dveikus, it compromises the oneness. Now what's necessary is called mamadaka. It's part of who you are. The wealthy man doesn't scream when he's eating the steak. You know why? It is the kachka. This is who I am. I'm not getting excited. It's so much part of me, not because I don't care about it, because I care about it so much. I don't even know how much I care about it. I'm not processing how much I care about it. This is actually who I am. Now I ask you a question. How do we experience the Rebbeinu Shalom? How do we experience Hashem, God? Through noise or through silence? Through singing, dancing, through screaming, yelling, through hollering, lifting up our hands, shaking our bodies violently, jumping, or through absolute silence, complete quiet. How do you experience Hashem? Anybody has an answer? You don't mean yesh v'yesh, you mean yesh v'ayin. You don't mean yesh v'yesh. Huh? So let's see a story. The next source, Keser Shem Tov Siman Reish Tesvav. The Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov. They asked the Baal Shem Tov, why is it that some Hasidim, the Baal Shem Tov, you know, right, who he was? He was the founder of the movement of Chassidus, passed away, Shavuos Tov Kuf Chaf, 1760. He was born Shnas Nachas, 1698, Hamchayel passed away, 1760. They asked the Baal Shem Tov, why is it that Hasidim, when they daven, a lot of them make a lot of ruckus? Daven quiet in one place, mindful. This is what he answered. Rabbi Yisrael Baal Shem Tov Alav Shalom Omar. So the Baal Shem Tov answered. Kisha Adam Toiveya Benahar. A man is drowning in the water. Chalila, what does the person do? He's just like, let me be quiet. He violently motions with his body, right? With one arm, with another arm, with any part of his body, screaming, hollering, moving, throwing himself to try to get out or to try to signal to people to help him. Imagine, you understand what he's responding to. The people who watch him don't make fun of him and say, I'm a shugana, what a crazy nut job. When somebody is davening in a machtnuas, a shuckled, don't laugh. You know why? He's also drowning. He's also drowning. He's trying to save himself. He has demons in him. He has skeletons in him. He has all types of thoughts, all the toxic thoughts of depression, of confusion, of guilt, of insecurity, of hate, of apathy, of indifference, whatever it is. Everybody knows their own issues. And now he's trying to experience God. Now let's explain it in our terminology. And there's friction. There's friction. There's who I am and there's who I want to be. There's who I am and who I know I could be. There's who I am on one level and there's who I am on another level. There's who I am and who God is. And that relationship creates friction. To take the log and fire, it's not simple. So yeah, there's resistance. You're trying to get out of the water. The pauper is a pauper. He's used to a boiled potato. He sees all this food. He's like, what? This is crazy. Both running away from the past and trying to connect to the future. But it's all not part of him. So Baal Shem Tov said, don't laugh from him. Don't laugh from him. That's one level. That's one level. This is when you experience God with a lot of noise. But then there is what's called dveikus. Dveikus is somebody who's not running away from themselves to experience God because they're there. They're intimate. They're embracing Hashem. And in that intimacy, there's absolute silence. There's absolutely no noise. There's no screaming. There's no hollering. Not because they're detached, because they're so attached. They are so one. They are so synthesized and integrated that the two merge into one seamless whole. And that's expressed by complete tainug, the pleasure of just being one with you. There's no resistance. There's no excitement. So let's understand what this means. What we see as excitement, we see excitement as the epitome of a relationship. That's not true. Excitement is powerful and beautiful. It's not the epitome of a relationship. It's the beginning of a relationship. The relationship is still external, and that's why you're so excited. You're excited because it's new and because there's resistance. In the ultimate relationship, there's silence. Come back to the vision of Eliyahu Hanavi. Say, "V'amadeta b'har lifnei Hashem, v'hinei Hashem loive v'ruach doi l'chazak m'farek hanim m'shabes loyim." Lifnei Hashem. Loi b'ruach Hashem v'achar ruach rash. Loi b'rash Hashem v'achar rash eish. Loi b'eish Hashem v'achar eish kol d'mamadaka. Says the Rebbe Rashab in a Maimer, in his what's known as Hemshech Taf Reish Ayin Beis, he says the words used here constantly are Yud Kei Vav Kei. There's Shem Yud Kei Vav Kei and there's Shem Elokim. Yud Kei Vav Kei, the name of Yud Kei Vav Kei is different than the name of Elokim. Elokim, Aleph Lamed He Yud Mem, we know. It says is the name of Midas, Hatzimtzum, Midas Hadin, restriction. Where God is restricted and concealed, the Pardes writes, the Moshe Cardavera writes, Elokim is Begematria, Hateva, nature. Nature is the whole universe that we observe. The laws of economy and the laws of history, the laws of politics, the laws of physics and science and biology and mathematics. It's all godliness, but it's Hateva. Somebody once made the cheshbon, 86, and they told me it doesn't make sense. I said, your problem is you're spelling Elokim with a kuf. You got to spell it with a hey, not with a kuf. You spell it with a hey, you'll get your 86. Hateva. Yud Kei Vav Kei is Hoya, Hoive V'yiyah, all in one transcendence. Loi B'rash Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei. When Yud Kei Vav Kei is here, when there's no concealment anymore, now it's Koil D'Mamadaka. And he says that's why in davening, this Psukkah de Zimra, the first part of davening, Birchas Kriyashma, the second part of davening, Kriyashma, the third part of davening, and then Shemona Esrei. The Arizal says, based on the Zohar, davening is a ladder. V'hinei sulam mutzav arza. The Zohar says sulam datzloisa. The ladder of Yaakov has 4 rungs. You begin on the earth and you start going up to heaven. What are the 4 rungs? You have different stages in davening. You don't start off with Shemona Esrei. You first start off with Karbanis, with the introduction of davening. You have Psukei de Zimra. You have Birchas Krishma. You have Kriyas Shema. Those are the 4 rungs in the ladder. What's the difference? The difference we see, Psukei de Zimra, Chazal say, and it's brought in Shulchan Aruch, by Poskim, you should say, Yedafke bekoil shira v'zimra, like you're counting diamonds. Psukei de Zimra you do with a coil, with a niggin. Birchas Krishma also, right? Birash Gadol v'Ifanim v'Chayis HaKodesh. Birash Gadol misnasim lo misasrafim. There's a niggin. And Kriyas Shema you also say with a sound. Suddenly it comes to Shemona Esrei. Silence. It should be the other way around. Shemona, even in Karlin, you have a daven in Karlin. Dorten schreit man, but takke geschrien. They scream gewaldig. It goes back all the way back. You have a daven in Karlin. Right? But Shemona Esrei, silence. It should be the other way around. Shemona Esrei is the peak. Chazal say, it says in Shulchan Aruch, now you're standing in front of the King of Kings. Now you should get excited. The pshat is, there's ruach, there's rash, and there's eish. Ruach is Psukei de Zimra. Rash is Birchas Krishma. Eish is Kriyas Shema. Ruach bidvar Hashem shamayim nasu v'ruach piv kol tzvam. Psukei de Zimra is basically a divine perspective on science. What is Psukei de Zimra? Hanoisen shelek hatzamer. You're going, it's cold today. What is it, 20 below zero, 10 below zero? Mashlich korchoy chefitim lifnei karosim yamoid. Some people go out to the cold and they say, it's freezing, get me into a house. And other people say, there's a whole dynamic, there's a whole energy. Whether it's snow, whether it's chayiv v'chol behemer, remes v'tzipper konof, eitz pri v'chol arozim. You could look at a tree and see a tree. You could look at a tree and see a miracle. And anybody who studies what it takes to make a tree, how a seed develops into a tree, it's absolutely wonderful. Absolutely extraordinary. But ruach piv kol tzvam, that's ruach. Then you have rash, birchas kriyas shema, birash gadol misnasim. And then you have the fire of Krishma. The fire, the passion of Kriyas Shema itself. But that's not Havaya yet. That's not Yud Kei Vavke. He doesn't say Loi Barash Elikim, Loi Barash Yud Kei Vavke. Then there's Shemona Esrei's Koil de Mama Daka. The silence. Why? Shemona Esrei is a moment of intimacy. Oneness. Here, I don't make noise. You can even see throughout history, there were different ways that even tzaddikim davened. There was those who would pray with tremendous ruckus and commotion. And then there were those, when you watch them daven, they could pray for hours without making a move and emitting a sound. I, for many years, saw a very big tzaddik davening, many years. And it was always very moving to me. Shabbos, Yom Tov, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Kol Nidrei, Ne'ilah. Not a move. A hand never went up. No swaying, no shaking, no screaming. It was fascinating to me. Fascinating. Different tzaddikim daven in different ways. So somebody who doesn't have an eye, somebody who's not sensitive could look and say, this person must be really cold. This person is hot, schreit. It's the other, sometimes exactly the other way around. The other person is struggling. He has to overcome the struggle. God! Come on! Come out of your hiding place. And it's a good thing. At least you're screaming. Reb Simcha Binim of Pshischa once said, he lived during the days of the French Revolution. French Revolution in 1789 brought freedom to France. It also introduced the guillotine. You know what the guillotine was? Tens of thousands of people were killed with the guillotine. They would behead people. Well, ISIS does it in a little bit of a different way, but the results are the same. So Reb Simcha Binim, is very pshisches. He once said that a Yid has to imagine himself that he's under the guillotine 24 hours a day. And the Yetzer Hara is standing, and he's about to lower the blade on his head. That's the consciousness of a Jew. So a chassid looks at him and said, Rebbe, what if I don't feel this way? I don't feel this way. Says, then it means your head was chopped off already. Your head was chopped off, you don't feel this one. Okay. Now, I'm not getting into the details. Again, sometimes this can be understood as tremendous pressure, which I think is not good for everybody. But the point is, at least he's screaming. The Baal Shem Tov says he's trying to get out of his mess. And that's a great madrega. It's called his spilus. And then there's dveikus. Dveikus is intimacy, oneness, complete silence. So therefore, for our relationship to be real, you have to be honest with yourself. Sometimes it has to be very noisy. Sometimes it has to be full of noise. Because I need to overcome components. I'm not always oil. Sometimes I'm straw. And sometimes I'm a big, brute, crude log. I don't want to go up. I don't want to. I like myself. I like to be a log. The Zohar says, you have a log, it doesn't want to burn. You have to splinter it. I don't want to be splintered. Sometimes a person is more edel, straw. Sometimes a person is oil. Shemen zayis zoch. That's the beginning of Tetzava. Shemen zayis zoch. It's pure. It's pure. And you have different neshamas. You have people who are very subtle. Ruchnius, transcendence, it speaks to them. It's their natural flow. And some people, they just like potato chips. They just like potato chips. Some people love lettuce. Right? Anybody? I know at least 2 people here who love lettuce. And some people, you have to explain to them the value of lettuce, and it still doesn't help. Somehow potato chips, nobody has to explain to them the value of potato chips and the value of ice cream. And the noise represents the fact that I'm struggling. Come now back to the Me'il. Aaron is commanded to wear a robe, and on the hem of the robes, al shulav, he has to have bells sewn on. Why? V'nishma koiloi bevoye el hakodesh u'b'tzeisoi v'lo yamos. Comes the Ramban, the last source on the sheet there, Heilige Ramban, and says, I have a big problem with Rashi. Rashi learns Chumash and most Mefarshim. You had pomegranate, bell, pomegranate, bell, pomegranate, bell, all around the rope. It says in the pasuk, Pa'amoyne zov b'soicham. It doesn't mean in the pomegranate. It means around the pomegranate. B'soicham means in between. Because after that it says soviv, around. Pamen v'rimen. And that's why, according to Rashi, it says twice. It says, Asis al shulav rimoinit chaylas. And then it says, right? Rimoinit chaylas al shulav zayiv. And then it says, Pamen zav al shulayam il saviv. The Ramban has a big problem. He says, Lo yadati gamkein lama aso harava pamoinim la'atzman pamen ben shnei rimoinim. I don't know why the Rav, Rashi, Rabbeinu Shlomi Yitzchaki, said that the bell should be between 2 pomegranates. According to Rashi, the pomegranates were useless. They were just there. V'ayavan in Sukkah, they weren't doing anything. According to the Ramban, that's not the meaning. The bell was in the pomegranate. The pomegranate was hollow. And inside, you put the bell. And you had what's called in the bell, you have, what is it called? The outer body. And you have the clapper. Right? The zug and the inval. You have the 2 parts of the bell, but it was all in the pomegranate. According to Rashi, the pomegranates are useless. Zog der Ramban ve'im lenoi. Maybe they were there for beauty. Every part of the garment, you know exactly, it's beauty. So the Ramban says, Lama hayu asuyim kiremoinim chalulim yasem kamin tapuchei zav. Ramban says, if it was for beauty, why pomegranates? Why hollow? Should have been golden apples. Why pomegranates of wool? It should have been golden apples. Comes the Mizrahi, the Belio Mizrahi, the great commentator on Rashi. He says, Eini yoidea lama tapuchim em yafim yoisem rimoinim. So the Ramban decided that if it's for beauty, apples. If it's pomegranates, it can't be for beauty. Maybe it's beauty pomegranates. No, can't be. And that's why it has to be that it was used for something. The Torah should have said, how are you hanging the bells? How are the bells attached? Do you have to make little rings in order to hang the bells? The real thing is, the real truth is, the pomegranate, the bells are in the pomegranates. They were hollow. They were made like little pomegranates that we see when they grow. They're not fully developed, and they didn't open their mouth yet. They didn't open their mouth. Of course, we're dealing here with wool and pomegranate, and then you put in the bells in them, and you could see them inside. That's the view of the Ramban. We have a very interesting Ramban here. Extremely interesting Ramban. But this is the way how in the Svarim of Chabad Hasidus this Ramban and Rashi are explained. Chazal and Shabbos say that the Jewish people are compared to tapuchim. They're compared to apples. And those represent, Chazal tell us, the beautiful, righteous Jews who are compared to apples. What about pomegranates? So everybody knows at the end of Masechta Chagiga, the Gemara says, Kepelach harimoin reikosech afilu poisha Yisrael maleyim mitzvahs kirimin. The sinners of Israel are filled with mitzvahs like a pomegranate. On the hem of Aaron's Kohen Gadol, he had what? Bells. Why? V'nishma koiloi bevoye el HaKodesh. Ubetzeisei v'lo yamos. Kod mamadaka. What happened to silence? The Kohen Gadol's job is to represent the entirety of the Jewish people as he comes to Hashem, including those for whom a connection with Hashem is a noisy struggle filled with daily resistance in order to transcend their lower self and connect to their higher self, in order to be able to excavate themselves from those thoughts and emotions that hold them hostage in a lower, depressing, fearful, guilty self, and become liberated to experience their oneness with their neshama, with their soul, which is a part of Hashem and Hashem himself. And the Torah says, don't think the bells are irrelevant. They are an indispensable part of the Kohen Gadol service. V'lo yamos. Without it, he can die. If he were to exclude, if he were to exclaim and declare that the lowly hem of the nation he represents don't belong to him, if he were to ignore the Jews who I could say are hanging on there, pun intended, literally hanging on there, on the hem of holiness, he would be violating the very essence of his mission, the very purpose of his life. V'lo yomos, this is the purpose of his existence. If his service of Hashem doesn't include the struggles of the ordinary individual Jew, he has no place in the Mishkan and the Beis HaMikdash as the Kohen Gadol, as the Shlucha de Rachmana and the Shlucha de Tzibura, as the emissary of the people and the emissary of Hashem. In other words, even before a person attains spiritual perfection, even before he reaches the place of Kol Dma Madaka, of silence, even when his entire life is spent making noise and trying to figure it out, the clamor of his efforts is music to God's ear. The very noise that he makes has a unique music, a unique sound. V'nishma koilei bevoye el HaKodesh. He's trying to come into Kodesh. He's not there. When you're there, you don't have to make noise. You're trying to come in. Ubetzeisa, you go in and you go out. You're trying to come in. That's what it means. You're not there yet. But that clamor, that clapper that the Palmoinim generate has a unique place. So with this mitzvah that was on the hem, it was on the bottom of the me'il. It was all the way on the bottom. It represents those who are still on the bottom, those who are on the hem. Hashem is saying, my place, my Yiddishkeit, my Torah, my Mishkan, my Beis HaMikdash, it doesn't have room only for Jews who burn like an oil lamp. For Jews who are in a state of what we would call bittul hayesh or bittul b'metzias, a state of kol dma madaka, but also for straw-like souls. Esav says, Ketzad ma'asrin es hamelech v'es hateven. Right? How do you find kedusha in straw? We spoke about it, Parshas told us. And even for Jews who are log-like souls. It's not only made for people who melt away in silence to Hashem, also for those who always have to find ways to overcome overcome thoughts, overcome instincts, cravings, fears, and attitudes that make us believe we're not holy, we're not pure, we're not powerful, we're not wholesome, we're not one with Hashem. The Ramban writes that his Sefer includes Dvorim Ne'imim L'Yoidei Chen, in his introduction to the Ramban, sweet words for those who know the mysteries of Torah. Rashi was written on Niloi Basi L'Pshuter Shel Mikra, for the literal interpretation and for the literal person. The Ramban says, if you're looking for beauty, you should have tapuchim, you should have apples. That's what you should have. That's what beauty is. Beauty is the apples. That's what the Ramban says. And therefore the Ramban concludes from this, that what would they remind him? They remind him certainly we're not just there hollow. They remind him we're there in order to hold on to the bells. Rashi's interpretation tells us they remind him themselves had a beauty. The Rimain itself has a beauty. What's the beauty of the Rimain? Afilu Paishi Yisrael Maleim Mitzvahs Kirimin. Even though that Rimain personality is very much connected with noise, it has a beauty all of its own. And that's why the Pasuk is telling us that to be a Kohen Gadol, V'lo Yamus, you represent every type of Jew. Those who celebrate and embrace the sound of silence, and those who have no choice but to embrace the sound of noise. Have a wonderful week.